Colors, attention.
Good evening and welcome to the 7 o'clock Stafford County School Board meeting. This evening, I would call us to order. I'm going to have the board members have roll call first, then we're going to have our color guard presentation and Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Hall, can you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Chase?
Present.
Ms. Hazard?
Here.
Ms. Healy?
Here.
Ms. Hollerback?
Here.
Ms. Randall?
Here.
Dr. Warner?
Here.
And Ms. Young?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
I would like everyone to rise as we have our color guard presentation and Pledge of Allegiance.
Sir, permission to present the colors.
Present the colors.
Present colors.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order. Colors. Right. Face. Forward. March.
You may be seated. I can't tell you how exciting it is to have our students back in our chambers presenting the colors. I'd like to thank our Colonial Forge High School, Army, JROTC, our cadet staff sergeants Marchant, McCabe, Leland, and Diaz. I'd like to thank them for coming out this evening. If we could give them a quick round of applause, hopefully they can hear us. Next, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any deletions or changes? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll start with our awards and recognitions. I am going to start this evening with our proclamation regarding recognizing the week of September 12th through 18th, this week, as Arts in Education Week. Last time I'll read this one. So, whereas arts education comprising a rich array of disciplines including dance, media arts, music, theater, visual arts, and more is a well-rounded subject and an essential element of a complete and well-rounded education for all students. And whereas arts education enables students to develop critical thinking and problem-solving skills, imagination and creativity, discipline and collaboration, on alternative ways to communicate and express feelings and ideas, and cross-cultural understanding, which supports academic success across the curriculum. And whereas arts education contributes to increased attendance and graduation rates and prepares students for college, career, and citizenship readiness, whereas arts education contributes to personal growth outside of the classroom, including increasing a student's likelihood to participate in civic life, volunteerism, altruism, and community engagement. And whereas to succeed in today's economy, students must masterfully develop traits that business leaders demand in a 21st century workforce. And whereas the Stafford County School Board is charged with the education and development of well-rounded students. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the School Board of Stafford County hereby proclaims the week of September 13th through 17th as Arts and Education Week throughout the school division and encourages all faculty, students, and families to observe the week with appropriate activities. Adopted this day, the 14th of September. Our next proclamation, Ms. Healy.
Thank you, Ms. Hazard. This is a proclamation for the observance of Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month from September 16th through October 15th, 2021. Whereas National Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month celebrates the Hispanic and Latinx community and highlights its countless achievements, And whereas Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month celebrates the histories, cultures, and contributions of those whose ancestors were indigenous to North America, Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas many Latinx Americans trace their roots to the cultures of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, including the Arawaks, the Aztecs, the Incas, the Maya, and the Taínos, some of whom trace their roots to the Spanish explorers or to the Africans who were enslaved in the New World. And whereas Stafford County Public Schools recognizes, honors, and celebrates the invaluable ways that Hispanic and Latinx students, families, and community members contribute to our school district and community. And whereas Stafford County Public Schools recognizes the value and importance of celebrating the value and importance of students of diverse cultural backgrounds, now therefore be it proclaimed by the school board that September 15th through October 15th, 2021, shall be observed as Hispanic and Latinx Heritage Month throughout the school system. The school board encourages all citizens to celebrate the contributions of people of Hispanic and Latinx heritage to our community. Adopted by the school board of Stafford County this 14th day of September, 2021.
Thank you, Ms. Healy.
Ms. Hazard, just one question. I don't know who wrote this, but at the top it says it's from September 16th through October 15th, and then at the therefore clause it says September 15th. So before we publish this or before you sign it, we need to clarify whether it starts tomorrow or Thursday.
Got it.
It goes through October 15th. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, moving on, we will be going to our presentations and reports. We're going to be starting, I believe, with Mr. Fulmer with our unaudited FY21 year-end financial report. I will look to Dr. either the presentation or before as a member of the FAB, since I believe you all have reviewed them, if you want to have first comment and then others.
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I provided an update to the FAB last week on our preliminary financial results for our operating fund for FY21, and wanted to also update you. This is ahead of the county staff will be providing an update to their board in a few weeks, and at that update, they typically include a slide or two about the school board. So I've work the schedule back so that I can get it in front of the FAB and then it's in front of the full board. But letting you know that these are still kind of some raw numbers, that they're getting really close. We have to submit our annual school report by the end of September, but it's not really until the end of August that we start finalizing numbers, and then we do our final entries at the beginning of September. So these are preliminary. They in no way have been audited, but I do want to go over some of the revenue, recapping some of the uncertainties leading into FY21 while we were building the budget, how we ended up with our actuals, our expenditures, and then recapping with what our year-end carryover will be. So high level on the revenues, if you recall, when we went into building the FY21 budget, there was a lot of uncertainty resulting or revolving around enrollment, our state revenue and basic aid, which is tied to the enrollment, and then the state more or less told us, hey, work with the numbers we're giving you, but they're not going to come to fruition. You can pretty much expect that we're going to come up short in our sales tax and potentially with our other basic aid. So while building the budget, we reduced our budget ADM in the middle of that budget cycle as late as March and April. And we also built in a state revenue contingency of $3 million. So we budgeted all the revenue, but then we took $3 million of expenditures and set them aside to help offset any decrease in revenue. Actually, sales tax came in over budget from the state. The state enacted a hold harmless cause for our enrollment. So we saw not only we captured all of those set aside funds, but we exceeded that. Our federal was right in line with where we were expecting. Some local revenues unrelated to the local county transfer, about $500,000 that came up short as the year was going on. In any kind of anomaly year, we would expect those accounts to come up short. Those could be expenditure rebates that we get for P cards and items like that. With some reduced spend, we would expect a reduction there. And if you recall, when we built the FY21 budget, we built in a carry forward from FY20. We knew we were going to have savings in 20, so we said let's move $1 million from those savings into 21. Board of Supervisors approved and appropriated that. However, because of the additional state revenue, we actually didn't have to move that $1 million over, so we left that in the reserve fund that's held on the county statements. I want to clarify that 3.3 in a total additional revenue was not appropriated from the county, so we don't actually have a right to spend that $3.3 million. So I explained to the FAB there's two big things that we have to make sure that we follow. One, we need to end up in the black and the positive. We do not want to overspend in any way. And then two, we can't overspend the legal appropriation that we're provided from the Board of Supervisors. On the expenditure side, once again, we had that $3 million. So on our revenue, this is not, that 3.3 additional revenue does not include the $3 million that we set aside on the expenditures. So we've had that $3 million we set aside for the expenditures. Since our revenue exceeded budget, it freed up that $3 million that we could then spend in FY21. On top of that, we had salaries, benefits, substitutes, hourly compensation. We had savings across the board in our compensation lines. We had savings in fuels, utilities. Actually saw, because our buses were not running as much last year, we saw a decrease in the repairs and maintenance on our buses. So those charges that we would pay to fleet had savings of approximately $500,000, maybe almost closer to $600,000 in savings there. And if you recall, starting as early as April and through May and June, came in front of you with several agenda items which the board approved that we could redirect those savings and apply to some of those mission critical things that we need to our buildings. A lot of them were security. We finished some projects that we've been working on over the last couple of years as funding came available, like our kitchen AC projects. We're able to do some general maintenance like carpet and furniture replacements, but we're excited to replace some fire alarm systems and some other key buildings. And then we're also able to fund design work that would be for future projects that are coming up in the 3R that we would have had to identify. Design work in itself can be expensive, so we were able to do a lot of that. We were able to do some building assessments, facility assessments, along with some plans of looking at, Hartwood and Drew of funding those items. So in summary, it all comes back to what is our carry forward and our county transfer. So a few numbers there, but really what it comes down to is our bottom line number, which is our carry forward of about $4.84 million. I just want to point out that is only 1.5% of our total budget for FY21. So we had considerable savings. We were able to redirect that and complete a lot of important projects at our schools. So our surplus for 21 would be 4.8. That's actually right in line for probably what we had in FY20 as well. Though we did have $1 million budgeted in FY22, so that $4.84 million is really only 3.8 that's going to go back into our reserve fund because we do need $1 million in FY22, assuming that we do need that. So it'll actually be 3.8 going back into that reserve fund. And just reminding you again that these are unaudited, they're not final, and we have to do our final reconciliation with the county. Our other funds, I do not have an update for you, a very high-level update that I can tell you that we are working on those. I don't think there's going to be any major surprises. Our health insurance fund in and right about where we expected. If you recall, during the year, it was approved that we could move a little over $4 million to cover stipends that we paid out to employees during the year. I believe it was paid out in December. So we took that out of our health insurance fund. So our health insurance fund, our final numbers will show a loss of over $4 million, but that was actually designed based on taking the savings of cash that we had in health insurance fund and recognizing the employees. So I will share those with the board at a later date. And just want to touch on fleet services and school nutrition as well, because I don't expect any glaring concerns there. We know that based on the year we had, we're going to see a reduction in revenue. We're seeing that. But with school nutrition, the only real revenue we had was our federal reimbursement we got for all the meals that we did provide to students. So we did have a pretty substantial revenue source there. As we look through those final numbers, that's the one we probably still have the most work to do with some reconciliation because it requires some numbers from the federal government. Fleet services, I'm pretty comfortable with that. We're going to show a loss. It will not be anything significant. All these funds will have a fund balance to cover any loss that they do show. So that is my high-level update, really concentrating on the operating fund with another kind of just recap of our other significant funds. And I will open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fulmer. I appreciate all the effort you and your staff do. Last year, we set aside $3 million in an abundance of caution. We have, I appreciate that Mr. Fulmer has been very forthcoming with figures so that we've been able to do special projects like Drew and Hartwood and try to assess and evaluate what we need. And I appreciate that he keeps our budget in the black so that we don't overspend, because that would be bad. I really don't want to go to jail. And I think that we have demonstrated a lot of fiscal restraint in trying to meet the school's needs and adjust to the crisis at hand. And with that, I will leave it open to questions for anybody.
Any questions or comments? All right, I'm going to have one.
Sure.
My usual. You talked about that the state sales tax revenue came in higher than expected. What are we seeing on the county side for the restaurant? You've walked this path with me for several years because of the discrepancy, and we've worked that through with the Board of Supervisors, that we didn't get shortchanged if we did not go over. How, and you may not know tonight, but just as maybe a follow-up just for us, because I know that is a dedicated fund for the schools. I'm just, myself even, just curious how that ended up working out on the county side. And like I said, just as a follow-up is.
Yeah, and I'll look into that, and we'll probably get an idea after the county presents in a few weeks on what their preliminary year-end results are. So the meals tax is what you're referring to, and it is dedicated. The county's meal tax revenue is dedicated for the school division. So if it happens to go over budget, they do take the increase with that exceeded budget, and they move that into our capital reserve fund that's held at the county side as well.
So I just want to make sure, because if that is indeed the case, that is something we have worked with the county with, and it does go to something with the schools. So I want to make sure that we just watch. I'd just be curious based on what we thought and what it ended up being. Perhaps there may be some more that may go into our reserve fund, which would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. All right. Our next one is our staff update on the first 4 weeks of school. So let's see. I see. Look to Dr. Jones to introduce the team, or to Dr. Nichols, however you all want to tag team this.
Well, first I just want to thank our principals for being here this evening, but Dr. Nichols will take it from here.
Good evening, Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Jones. It's my privilege to be here tonight to present our principals, who will be presenting on the insight of our core mission, which is about teaching and learning. This evening specifically, we have 3 of our administrators who have volunteered to present this evening, representing each of the 3 levels. We'll have, starting out, Mr. Bingham, who is the principal at H.H. Poole Middle School, Mrs. Keena Butler, the principal at Park Ridge Elementary School, and then Dr. Stemple, the principal of Mountain View High School. This evening, we're going to provide an overview, really looking at the climate and culture in our schools. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we've been supporting the challenges that we've been looking at with our students and our situations, and also addressing the unfinished learning that we've had, and then finishing up talking about how we've been managing our transitions within the school day. And again, these have incorporated some of the questions that we've had, but also to provide an insight on having our students back face to face. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Bingham to come forward and start our presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Jones, and school board members. Tonight, we'd like to give you an update on how things are going for our schools. However, I think you'll see a different perspective from the emails and phone calls you all receive. I want to start with how much students and teachers and parents want their children back in classrooms with in-person learning. Last year, during hybrid classes and virtual learning, students were afraid to talk in the hallways and in their virtual classroom meetings. That even when students returned, to the hybrid schedules, students would not talk in the hallways or between classes. It was a sad sight to see the halls so quiet between transitions. This year, we're seeing students walk through the hallways laughing, talking to each other, building appropriate relationships with each other that were desperately needed for our students. Parents are sending emails about how excited their children are to be back in school. This year, we continue to offer school activities. However, we have more students trying out for sports and after-school programs and participation in activities that are offered. Parents will be able to attend indoor athletic events and cheer on their students and teams. Social emotional learning supports are a universal focus among the schools. Thanks to you, our school board, all middle and high schools have a full-time social worker to help teachers in the classroom. Part of the high school and middle school emphasis on social emotional learning includes restorative practices in which the schools are in various stages of implementation. Beyond the changes associated with our new student code of conduct, restorative practices include a continuum of learning of opportunities from classroom circles to restorative justice approaches to conflict resolution and accountability. In addition, our elementary schools continue to work on responsive classrooms. This emphasis on social emotional learning also includes programming informed by the ongoing monitoring of Panorama survey data collected last spring. The Panorama is a program purchased by the county that surveys schools and is specifically designed to identify the needs of our students and buildings and provide schools and classrooms with lessons that help us address the social emotional needs of our students. Interdisciplinary PLCs and grade level team meetings also meet weekly on all levels. These items discuss student academic performance, social emotional development, and any other factors that may impact our student learning and development. By having the students attend 5 days a week versus hybrid or virtual, teachers are able to see the students and identify their needs. Last year, teachers struggled with the limited engagement between students and the teachers through the monitor. It was difficult for teachers to identify the needs of our students. Teachers could only guess as to what was happening at the other end of the computer in some occasions. In the middle school, a 30-minute flex time is included in the schedule for students who need support for the classes they are currently taking. These intervention sections target groups of students with similar skill deficits. Despite the challenges this year, many schools have moved the flex period to the beginning of the school day so that students don't miss core instruction. Schools are making up lost time by opening schools early to allow for breakfast. Students who may have missed instruction in class can access teachers at 8:20 in the middle school for extra help and catch up on the work as needed. Teachers are recording their first block classes to review with the opportunity for students to check in with teachers during flex time or after school. All students provide concurrent instruction with students who are quarantined. Teachers are equipped with owls and technology necessary for students to participate in real-time classrooms. In the event that a concurrent instruction is not possible due to the venue or lab, alternative learning activities are made available through Canvas. Students engage in learning activities that support their multiple intelligences while providing opportunities for student-to-student collaboration and creativity within the classroom. Students are generally excited to return to school and welcome each day with positivity and enthusiasm. Student engagement and work completion have improved since last year due to their teachers having immediate access to students and being able to provide just-in-time supports. All of us are getting weekly emails from parents thanking us for all that we're doing to ensure their students are safe and learning. Parents understand the need for a little cooperation and sacrifices to ensure their students are in school and are learning at the high levels they have come to expect from Stafford County Public Schools. Ms. Butler?
Good evening, Madam Chair, other members of the board, and Dr. Jones. At the elementary level, we are in the process of completing fall growth assessments to determine the needs related to learning loss. We have begun our professional learning communities process, where collaboration as teams is occurring to review results of preliminary data, which is helping us make data-based decisions.
Can we turn that, bring that down?
Yeah, I'm a little short.
You're a little shorter.
I'm a little shorter than Rob, right?
Thank you. I just want to make sure you're heard.
We have begun our professional learning communities process, where collaboration as teams is occurring to review results of preliminary data, which is helping us make data-based decisions. Additionally, at the elementary level, our schools are afforded the opportunity to hire additional paraprofessionals to enhance small group instruction. We have taken these new individuals, provided training on math and literacy intervention, and we've grouped them in literacy and mathematics teams to go into classrooms during those instructional blocks to provide small group support to allow our teachers to meet the most significant learning needs. So things are going well at the elementary level. We too are receiving lots of emails from parents and lots of support as we try to navigate these new waters. Thank you.
Good evening. Down arrow. Got it. I wanted to go over a few mitigating strategies and talk to you just briefly about some highlights from this first quarter of the year, because I think a lot of the highlights are lost in the emails and the complaints, and we want to make sure we highlight the right things for you. First, the adherence to our mitigation strategies. All the schools are slightly different, populations are different, but everyone has continued the mitigation strategies that we started last year. We are trying to socially distance as much as the greatest extent possible, students eating in various locations, students moving through the hallways, wearing masks as much as some students don't want to, washing hands and hand sanitizer, disinfecting desks between classes. All of these strategies are in place, and there's evidence that they're working. I sent an email to my community with all of our staff. We have over 2,300 people in the building. Our worst week of COVID positivity, that goes from Sunday to Saturday, is less than 0.75% of our whole population. So our mitigation strategies are working. That same week, the positivity rate daily in Virginia was at 10.6%. So I think you can see that our mitigation strategies in our schools are working, and we're working to make sure they do. And a lot of that has to do with all of the people that we need to take a minute and thank tonight, and there are many. First, we got to thank our teachers. I don't think last year holds a candle to this year what we've asked teachers to do. The concurrent learning was tough. Concurrent learning, teaching students that aren't there but still responsible to teach them, teaching kids that are in quarantine or home because of COVID, teaching students while you have other students there. It's been a tough job. But what's amazing about our teachers is what they've gone above and beyond. Helping with bus duty. I go by Margaret Brent every morning on my way to work, and I see all the Margaret Brent teachers out there on bus duty, helping the car rider line, directing traffic, and that happens at every school. Teacher volunteers. And like the teacher on the screen, Mr. Thompson, he teaches physics at one of our high schools. 2 weeks into the school year, he was told he had to quarantine. His only question was, can I teach from home? He did not miss a single lesson teaching from home, and that's one example of a teacher going above and beyond his classroom duty. We have another teacher who leaves on his planning period, third block, drives to another school to teach math class, and drives back. So when a kid asks me how they can get to class in 5 minutes, if you can get from Colonial Forge to Mountain View in 5 minutes, you can get to class in 5 minutes. So We don't ask how fast he's driving. But teachers are going above and beyond, and we owe a great deal of thanks to all of our teachers for the work they're doing. They're working their tails off, and so to that, we salute our teachers. Our bus drivers. These two bus drivers, Mr. Rowland and Mr. Brickhouse, are just examples of all the complaining you're hearing about transportation. Just look at these two gentlemen, salts of the earth. After their 5, 6, 7 runs, they'll come back by the school and make sure everybody's been picked up. And if nobody's been picked up, they'll say, get on the bus. They don't ask, where do you live? They just say, get on the bus. These are two gentlemen that just epitomizes what our bus drivers do for our kids every day. And they're doing great stuff, and we thank our bus drivers. Our nurses, this is a picture of a school nurse on a Saturday. This is not uncommon to be there on a Saturday. I was there too, but it's not uncommon to see a nurse on the, but you know, you think of a nurse, you think of things like stethoscopes and thermometers and those old pictures. Now I picture my school nurse with a phone next to her ear because she spends so much time with the contact tracing, and our school nurses have just been wonderful, helping each other out and contact tracing, and probably saying the same thing over and over again every phone call, why what's going on with contact tracing. But to that, a big shout out to our nurses and thank them for all their hard work. Our safety and security team, you have not ever been called any bad names until you've directed traffic in Stafford County Public Schools. It is a thankless job. Everybody knows how to do it better, but never volunteers to do it. So big shout out to anyone, whether it's a teacher, an administrator, or a safety and security team that's directing traffic. We couldn't do it. As you know, you've seen the complaints. Traffic has been greater in all of our schools, but with the help of our safety and security teams and our volunteers, we've made traffic, moving traffic along, so we certainly thank them. And our administrators, we have to thank them. If you look past this picture, you'll notice that it's pouring rain. The buses don't load themselves. It takes administrators outside to load buses in the rain. On this particular day, I was outside too, and I did have someone ask me if I knew it was raining. And I said, yep, I did. We were pretty sure, but the buses don't load themselves, and administrators, when it's 103 out there in the black asphalt or raining, they're outside doing their bus duties. And smart principals make sure we have good APs to do it for us. And then finally, we have to thank our wonderful students. Without them, I had a nice email from a parent, and this epitomizes what our kids feel right now. And she said, I'm so thankful my kid is back. I've seen the stress leave their shoulders. I've seen them become more social. Thank God my kid is back. And for that, I think, is really how a lot of kids are feeling about school. And it's great to have them back. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Nichols.
Well, first, I'd like to have all our administrators, our principals who came from the elementary, middle, and high school to be with us tonight to show their support for their colleagues. Just have them stand and thank them with a round of applause for what they do each and every day. Yes, and there is one other group that we would like to thank because we work with partnership with them each and every day, and school would not be school without our parents. So thank you to all our parents who support our education, and again, through these times. And we know we're getting a lot of responses back and positive quotes that we can pull out emails that are just thanking the schools for having their kids back in school face-to-face and in that learning environment, especially after the year we've had. So thank you to all our parents also. Terry Neely, Dr. Grider, and myself are here, and Dr. Jones, if you have any questions specific to our overview presentation based on what's been going on the last 4 weeks of school.
Want to start us off?
I will.
Okay.
Thank you guys very much for coming and supporting each other and presenting to us. It's so exciting to see the pictures and to hear the stories, because you're right, we do see one side of it, and I can tell from going into schools, like the stuff that we have to hear and deal with up here sometimes has nothing to do with the day-to-day runnings in the schools, because they're just doing their job and providing the teaching and learning experience. One of the questions that I had was, we asked for, you mentioned social workers that we provided in the schools, but we also have provided additional counselors. And so my question is, how are they being utilized? Are they just in the high, I know counseling in elementary versus counseling in the middle versus counseling in the high school is different. Some of it is dividing it up by letters of the alphabet, but I also wanted to know how that is working in the schools to provide more social emotional support.
Sure. Appreciate the question. And I will ask if Ms. Neely or Dr. Grider have an overview before I give one on the high school.
So from a middle school perspective, 2 of our schools only had 2 guidance counselors, Drew Middle School and Dixon Smith Middle School. And so we were able to add a 3rd counselor to those 2 schools, which I think has really done a lot to help the workload of the 2 that were there, and also to help with the administration and teachers. So I feel like it's been very beneficial, and I thank the board for that.
And I would just say in elementary, we're really noticing that our kindergarten students, our first grade students even, and some of our second grade students who are our youngest to actually coming back to school and just learning school has been a major emphasis for us in terms of the work with counselors and just helping integrate back into, or maybe for the first time, because we have some students who were totally virtual last year who are just experiencing school the first time this year or have had a long break. So we definitely appreciate your support in that area.
And I'd have to say at the high school level, with the addition of counselors in our high school level, our overall caseloads have decreased, which gives the counselors an opportunity to actually work a little more one-on-one with students. Again, working in groups, looking at our SEL data from our surveys and things, and trying to provide an environment that's conducive for learning and providing that positive school culture and climate. So letting them work with the students, providing groups. And again, I'd have to echo what Dr. Stempel said. I also see our counselors out there directing traffic, supervising students, but at the same time at lunch, they may be supervising, but they're walking around talking with students, and I've seen that a lot more this year than I've seen in the past. So I think the increased numbers have definitely helped with reducing the caseloads that they had in the past.
Any other comments? All right, I have one. And this is just more long-term thinking. Most of the board members know I will not be here as much for the budget coming forward, but with the increased responsibilities going on in any of the schools, I know the board several years ago put an emphasis on large schools having additional assistant principal support, realizing that the schools of today are changing as well as our numbers. I'm trying not to stay on my growth thing, but I can't ever get away from it. Going forward and based on all the different roles that were shown on those scales of what everybody from the admin to our teachers are doing, is there a thought that potentially going forward to be thought about for the budget, that potential administrative support may be needed? Because I'm not certain, I would like to say I'm certain we will be out of this COVID experience soon, but it has not. And having learning support, additional support for teachers, I feel that that's also part of an admin role. Has the start of this school year identified, in your opinion, potentially, that maybe additional admin support is needed at any of the 3 levels? I'm going to look at you for high school, but I know that you have other colleagues who may jump over you for whatever you may say next. But as I watch those slides, we are asking a lot more of a lot of people. Do we need people at the school level? So I'm giving you the opportunity.
Madam Chair, I'm going to make a comment here. So, one of the things that's real clear to me is that our staff are working really 24 hours a day. I mean, it's nonstop. And I've had conversations with several of our principals about administrative interns. That's something we used to do in Stafford County. We have, one of our more veteran principals spoke today, Dr. Stemple. I hope he's not considering retirement, but I would certainly understand after this year if he was. So we need to make sure that have a succession plan. So having administrative interns would certainly be something I think that would be prudent for us as a community to ensure that we have strong leadership in the future and that we're preparing our administrators for even more challenging times. So I'll just mention that as one thing we might want to think about as we go through this budget season.
Still want to jump in, Dr. Nichols?
I'm sure there's probably 30 others that will want to come up and get the mic also to get their opinions. Yes, I do believe that the call and school has changed over the years, and the requirements placed on our administrators. We still have to remember our primary focus is teaching and learning, and sometimes with all these other demands, we get away sometimes of what's really important. So I think the added support would be appreciated at every level, because when you start getting 500-600 kids on a caseload, that's a lot to try and deal with your students and individual needs. And as we continue to focus on individualizing education to meet the needs of all students, I think there is a big need for increased administrative support, whatever that may look like.
And I'll just add this comment too. You heard a comment about, so if you think about teaching first, second, third graders how to read, what we've discovered from COVID is we need more staff, particularly for that small group instruction. I'm sure Ms. Neely wants to comment on it, but that small group instruction we know is so foundational. So if we don't get it right by third grade, then we spend the rest of our resources trying to help students learn the skills they need to be successful.
So if I could just add one thing, and Ms. Hazard, you brought up a great point. If conditions like this continue to persist in future years. So our principals do a lot during the course of the day as a normal part of their job, but this year, almost all of them spend a great deal of time doing contact tracing. So they're working with their nurses, trying to figure out which students need to be quarantined, working with the parents to try and help them to understand. So it's a tremendous load in addition to all the normal things that they have to deal with. So you brought up an excellent point. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Neely, come on. You got to go for elementary. Your principals are here.
I think you just foreshadowed a budget request from elementary principals that will be coming your way, so I am sure that we concur. And we're thankful that we have a few schools that we've been able to go ahead and integrate that in a plan, a continuum plan, but we certainly have other schools who are in need.
We have some of the greatest staff, but I also don't want to burn out the greatest staff. And so part of where I'm going with this is in that vein. Whether it is you need additional communications help, and I don't mean that like you can't communicate, but additional people, I just really would indicate that it seems obvious to me that that is something that might be needed probably not in the future, probably yesterday, but I can't really change that. So I just wanted to give you all the opportunity to say that. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming this evening. All right. Ooh, excuse me, turn myself off. Our next section will be our citizen comments this evening. 3 minutes are allotted to each speaker or group. Speakers are encouraged to provide a copy of their comments to our board clerk, who is sitting over to my right. It would be to your left. You shall identify yourselves by name, any organizational affiliation if you represent that organization. Please also announce the purpose or topic of your comments. The chair reserves the right to restrict the total citizen comment to a predetermined maximum number with approval of the board. Any citizen comment which is profane, abusive, or which threatens imminent physical harm shall be ruled out of order by the chair. Although the board provides the opportunity for citizen comment, individuals desiring to register complaints against the division employees or programs, services, or activities can also utilize procedures outlined in Stafford County Public School Policy 1113. If you have not spoken before, we have the stoplight system up here. When you get started, the light will be green. When you have 1 minute remaining, there will be a yellow light. That means you have 60 seconds. When the red light comes on, you will be asked to stop your comments. If you are mid-sentence, quickly finish that sentence, and then the rest of your comments, if you have them in writing, please hand them to our clerk. I have 2 people who have signed up to speak this evening. If there is anyone else who is interested in speaking, please feel free to go ahead and get out of your seat and stand on the far side so you can come down very easily. I have 2, Nicole Doolin and Melissa Angel, and like I said, if there's anyone else, just stand off to the side so you can come down easily. And ladies, come on forward. Thanks for coming this evening.
Hello, my name is Nicole Doolin. I have 2 students in Stafford schools, one at Hampton Oaks Elementary and one at Brook Point High School. I'm here to talk about transportation. I know that this is a national issue. I know you guys are fighting as hard as you can against an overwhelming shortage. I have some specific concerns that I don't know if they've been addressed. Or if you're even aware of them, but I'd like to know what's being done about them. My son's bus has been particularly problematic. My son has not arrived at school before the start of classes one day this year. He has been 11 minutes late at the least and 40 minutes late at the most. He's missing instruction time in his first period class. I printed out a copy of his most recent test, which I'll make available if any of you want it. But I wonder how well you would expect to do on an earth science test if you had not been in class for the material. In talking to my son, he mentioned that sometimes his bus is picked up as a second route or a double route, where he's being put on a bus with another route. In one case, the bus driver picked up the Shirley-Heim route and the Brook Point route and ran him and all the high schoolers out to Shirley-Heim and then over to Brook Point. And he pointed out, at that point, your contact tracing falls apart. You have no idea what students are on that bus. We're a month in, and he hasn't been picked up on time. In the evenings, I'm making arrangements for a neighbor to pick him up because he's getting home after 5 if he takes the bus. And I am keeping an eye on what time the bus rolls through the stop, and it's about 10 after 5 every day. On Fridays, his bus has no driver. We get a text message in the morning that says that his bus will have no driver that day and that he will be a second route. The first time that happened, I called the bus garage and asked what was, and they said it's running about 20 minutes late. And I said, if it was only 20 minutes late, it'd be 10 minutes earlier than usual. You really don't have any idea where your bus is. The other thing, with him arriving 10 or more minutes after the start of school, I just heard, I know I'm out of time, just heard one of the teachers say that they're making time in the morning for additional instruction and breakfast. If they're arriving 10 minutes or 40 minutes into first period, some of your kids aren't eating.
Please follow up with an email. It sounds like you had some information. If you could share with us, or if you have it tonight, to send to our clerk, but also you can send to us as well.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Melissa Angel, and I'm in the Aquia District. I'm also one of the leaders for the local chapter of Moms for Liberty. We just recently formed, so you'll be seeing more of us in the future. Whether that's good or bad, I guess depends on the decisions you make this school year. I am here to share my experience with the transportation issues we've been dealing with since school started. For the past 5 years, I've been blessed with an amazing bus driver. She takes pride in her job and truly cares about our kids. I know my children are safe with her. I make sure each year I show her my appreciation and let her supervisors know as well. And at the end of each summer, I pray that we have her again in the new school year. But ever since my oldest started middle school 3 years ago, it has been a struggle to find a permanent driver for her route. Pre-pandemic, we just dealt with late bus times and multiple different drivers. Last year, it was the same thing. This year, I have driven her to school and picked her up more times than she has ridden the bus. I can count on my 2 hands the number of times she's ridden the bus, and we've been in school now for almost a month and a half. The first week was chaotic, long wait times for pickups and drop-offs, and scorching temperatures. Each day I drove home, I saw kids at bus stops waiting for buses that sometimes never came. Parents already headed up north for work, scrambling to find a neighbor that could possibly drop their kids off. First, we were asked to drive our kids if possible. Transportation relieved at what help they could get. Then I received an email after a few days asking parents to trust the buses and not drive our kids because we were causing traffic issues on Courthouse Road. I continued to drive my kid to school whenever possible because the bus was so late my child was missing her first class and part of her second. This is not how I want her school year to start. Then it evened out and it was only a day or two here and there and that the bus was delayed. But within the past week and a half, I've had to drive her to school every day because the route still does not have a permanent driver, and I have not been receiving any communications that the bus will be delayed. In addition to this, she has had school sport games delayed for the past 2 weeks because of the transportation issues. I am fortunate to telework and have been able to drive her, but not every parent has that option. And although I was blessed with an amazing bus driver the past few years, I know many have not shared that experience. The issues with transportation started before the pandemic. The pandemic just made it worse and finally let everyone see how bad it's been getting. Our children and we the parents are carrying the burden of poor planning and bad decisions. Our children deserve better, and this is not the return to normalcy we promised them. Thank you. Does this go to you?
All right, anyone else? Come on down.
To provide this before or after? Good evening. My name is Logan Moore. I'm a father of 2 boys, and I'm here on behalf of the growing concern for my eldest son, Hunter, age 8, 2nd grade. He has suffered emotionally and mentally in this calamity that we're facing. In my own educational opinion, he is behind in his academics. I've had to put him in therapy because of his growing depressed behavior since the onslaught of uncertainty and instability in this social and his academic life. He lost opportunities to be with friends and well-trained teachers, professionals who are better at young child education than I am. They have said not only have they seen that he has suffered, but other students as well, emotionally, socially, and academically. My child has expressed suicidal thoughts when reflecting on his missed opportunities of friendships, knowledge, and the joy he received from his engagement in sports here in Stafford County. My family desperately needs an explanation of how any of these policies that we're considering improve my child's best interest. I'm here to So my concern is if I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now. I guess my question is, if we are restricting basic human socialization that children need at this young age, it's definitely necessary for their mental health.
why is it necessary if we are to consider going back to virtual teaching? I hope that's not anything that we're considering. What benefit does this have for our kids, and what is the impact we're going to see in the future? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could sign in on that sheet right to your left, that would be great. Oh, there's a whole new system. Oh, good. Thank you. Come on down, sir. You can sort of be in the on-deck circle.
Good evening. My name is David Vandresco. Just got a couple of quick stats. I'll try to keep it under 3 minutes here. So it's come to my attention recently that basically the school board is going by the CDC and the Virginia Department of Health. All right, fine. So all time, according to the VDH, Stafford's had 13,915 cases of COVID. That means 91%, 91.13% of all of Stafford County is unaffected. That's an A. All time, Stafford's had 421 hospitalizations. That means of the 13,000 cases, 97% don't go to the hospital. And that means 99.73% of the total population of Stafford is not in the hospital because of COVID. That's also an A. Total deaths in Stafford, 89. That is 99.36% of the cases in Stafford do not end in death, or 99.94% of Stafford County is alive and well, not dealing with COVID problems. That's an A. We're looking to get out of this, right? Those are A grades. Rappahannock, and that's all age groups. According to the VDH, Rappahannock region, getting short on time here, so I'll speed this up. Total population of people under 19 unaffected, 95.75. That means people of the 165,859 people in Rappahannock region under 19, they didn't deal with COVID. 99.98% in the Rappahannock region weren't in the hospital. 99.994% of that age population in the Rappahannock region are alive and well. According to the VDH, there has been 1 death in the Rappahannock region under 19. According to the CDC, there has been 0. At-risk population, per the CDC, diseases in children mostly appear to be relatively mild, and there is evidence that a significant proportion of infections across all age groups are asymptomatic. Most of the cases they have more than one symptom. Morbidities, I think it's 2.9. There was actually an article in the Atlantic, I don't have a source for that here, because it came out yesterday, that I think they did 50,000 hospitalizations in the United States. Half of them didn't even come in for COVID. We're looking to get out of this. We're not looking to prolong it. We have A grades. Let's calm down here. Oh, one more second here. I got Stafford metrics here. Basically, everything's really, really good in Stafford.
And sir, if you want to,
I'll be done in a second.
No, sir, we had 3 minutes. If you can,
okay.
If you can provide
5
that
seconds.
information to us, please.
Homecoming's been canceled for the kids' gatherings. Anyone recognize these board members who are?
Okay, sir,
Yeah.
if you would like to provide that to us.
Look up
Sir,
these
we're
three.
finished.
I
Thank
know,
you.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you.
My point is rules for thee, but not for
Okay,
me.
thank you. All right, is there anyone else who wishes to address the board? All right, hearing none, I will close public comments, and we will move on to our board committee standing reports.
Thank
Dr.
you, Madam Chair.
I know which way I'm going to look. so.
So the FAB met on 9/9 and discussed finalized the FY23 budget priorities, making additional edits to reflect the discussions at the work session on H17. This is on the agenda for action tonight. These priorities focus on 3 key areas: developing a competitive, sustainable compensation plan for licensed and non-licensed personnel, and improving efficiencies and planning for the cyclic replacement of our technology, buses, and other resources. We need to plan for the challenges associated with population growth. The new census data is out and shows that our growth exceeded expectations, and we are the second fastest growing county in Virginia. And one thing that remains on our priority is increasing the PPE towards the state average. We had discussions of class sizes for high school and middle school math. We have currently 13 classes with teachers have more than 32 students. Math teachers are a critical need. We are offering additional compensation for those teachers teaching extra blocks and using concurrent teaching methods for some courses to expand access to students, especially for dual enrollment or other specialized math classes. We have other areas of critical needs, low incident special ed, which is not offered by Virtual Virginia, and we also need science and foreign language teachers. In an effort to increase our recruitment and retention of staff, we discussed changing policy 2105, which would allow for the transfer of students for non-licensed staff. Currently, from our licensed personnel, we enroll about 160 students across all of our schools, which represents about 0.5% enrollment. In most cases, most of our non-licensed staff actually live in Stafford County, so we anticipate that this would be even probably about half as many potential students. So we will be recommending, the FAB will be recommending a revision to School Board Policy 2105 and allow non-resident service sector employees to attend Stafford County Public Schools. Part of the reason for this is we feel that some of the bus drivers who left us may have chosen to stay because they could not adjust their schedules in where they lived with the schedule here. Additionally, we discussed the uniform salary scale and adjustments since we have several critical groups in transportation, fleet services, operations and maintenance, health services, and of course, we're trying to add paras to help with the small learning groups in elementary school and other areas, and IT. And in many cases, many of our service sector employees have crossover roles in the community and the private sector, so we are constantly competing. I'm going to go on, and I also am chair of the governance committee. So in there, we have new updates to the electronic participation in meetings. This is a state mandate. We also have additional updates to the Title IX policy. This is a federal update, and we will be bringing, Human Resources will be bringing Policy 4000s for review to the board. They were reviewed in the Governance Committee. Additionally, we discussed a draft resolution to add the Ad Hoc Transportation Advisory Committee, which will be discussed tonight, and if the board is agreeable, I will be moving that to action. Thank you.
Any other board standing committees? All right, seeing none, we will move on to board member comments. Any volunteers to start us off? Nobody? Ms. Hollerback, I'm going to look at you then, because you looked at me.
I'm going to defer.
Defer? All right. Ms. Healy?
Well, thank you, Ms. Hauser, for not starting on the end. It's usually Dr. Chase or myself. It's the disadvantage of sitting at the end. I want to be very brief, but I do want to talk about transportation. I had the benefit of earlier this evening having a discussion with Dr. Jones, because I am personally, professionally, incredibly frustrated. I want to recognize that Dr. Jones is doing the best he can, Mr. Fulmer, Mr. Baldwin, but in my view, that best is not good enough right now. And part of my concern has to do with communication. And we are not communicating on an adequate basis with our constituents, our students and their families. So I know help is on the way, and I'm confident that Dr. Jones and his staff will come through this, but it's got to be faster. If resources are a problem, tell us. I mean, we've increased the pay for bus drivers. You know, we can provide resources, but we have got to communicate with our families, and we cannot leave children standing at the bus stops for hours at sometimes. And in some cases, their parents are in a position, or a neighbor, where they can drive them to school, but in other ones, they're not. And that's what concerns me. So I know Dr. Jones is going to have more data for us, and he's got, you know, plans on the horizon, and I very much appreciate that, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. But I do not want to get another email, although I will invite emails. If someone is calling transportation, not getting an answer, or getting a voicemail continually, we need to know. Because, I mean, I got one as of yesterday, and I know I talked to Mr. Fulmer after the last meeting. I talked to Dr. Jones, and I know we've got more people out there to staff, but the phones aren't getting answered, or they're going to voicemail. So we have to do better. We just have to. And I feel that, you know, this is not just on you. This is on the school board. I mean, I am failing to provide transportation, and that's my responsibility. That's not a luxury. That is something that I am required to do. We're failing these kids that are getting to school late. And I asked Dr. Jones, I said, what is it? You know, you're the lucky one that gets the bus on time, or the unlucky one that doesn't? Because it sounds like the same students are continually on that second run, third run, and getting to school late. So I am hoping that when we are here next, we'll have some joyful news. On a positive note, I want to thank the parents who are writing in. They're not complaining about their bus drivers. They are celebrating our bus drivers. They're telling us how wonderful the bus drivers are, how much they appreciate them. It's the support system that isn't working. So I am not complaining about bus drivers. In fact, I applaud the bus drivers. I don't know how they're doing what they're doing. And I look forward to the new bus drivers that we have coming on very, very shortly. Thanks to Dr. Jones, I think we had one that started this week and more that are starting next week. So that's a good thing. But we have got to communicate. We've got to look at who's not getting served here. I mean, there should be some notice and see who can provide transportation, who can't, and let's focus on the ones that can. You know, get it done. This is 6 weeks into school. So that's my thing, and I, like I said, I was incredibly frustrated, and after talking to Dr. Jones, I felt a lot more positive about it. I know, you know, there's things on the horizon, but I want them like tomorrow. I want to have somebody say, well, at least they answered the phone, and they told me, you know, what was going on. Now, even better than answering the phone is to get that word out so they don't even have to call. But that's a challenge that I would present. You know, let's communicate. And once we communicate, then we can better work to resolve, you know, these issues. So that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Ms.
I lied.
Hollenbeck, you want to jump in?
It's kind of a comment question type of thing, and it's dealing with what Ms. Healy said about the communication. And I know everybody's trying their best. My question is are we short-handed in the transportation office to accept phone calls and that kind of thing? Is there something that the board can do? Can we allocate some money for y'all to hire some temporary admins to field phone calls and direct them to where they need to go so that parents can get answers when they call as opposed to not getting the phone answered.
Well, I know initially, at the beginning of the year, a lot of our staff that would have been answering the phone were driving buses.
They shouldn't be answering the phones if they need to be driving buses. So that's my question. Do you need more resources?
But we have, and I'll give Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Fullman an opportunity if they want to comment, but I know we've done some things to try to reassign staff there to provide additional support. So I'll invite them to add
Dr.
any additional
Jones,
comments.
let's hold that comment. Let's get through all the board
Okay.
comments, and then during your board member comments, I'll let you share the, how you would like to. How about we do that, just so we can get through, I'd prefer that exchange, if that's okay. Dr. Chase, is that, sorry, I know you're on the end. Is that okay?
So, yeah, I would definitely ditto Ms. Healy's comments about transportation, and I would emphasize also that the students who are missing their first block every day since school started are really, really, we need that fixed. So just to reiterate that. But I want to take a minute to thank Dr. Jones for attending last week's Board of Supervisors meeting to assure them that critical race theory is not part of our curriculum and to our knowledge is not being taught in Stafford County Public Schools. But I have to say it was upsetting to me to then see the 5 supervisors who were present for the meeting unanimously vote in favor of drafting a resolution tying some part of school funding to our not teaching something we don't teach. In my opinion, it indicated a lack of trust in our interim superintendent and this board. And I must say, it reminds me of a resolution that was passed a little less than 3 years ago, threatening the school board with a loss of funding if we did not put a trailer at Hartwood Elementary School. And some might ask me, why get upset about the passage of this resolution if Stafford County Public Schools isn't teaching critical race theory? We have nothing to worry about, right? Well, my focus needs to be on how we provide the best education we can for our students. And one of the most important factors is good teachers. So how do I keep good teachers in Stafford County? Salary is huge, and I appreciate the county's help to make teacher salaries more competitive. But a second important factor is work environment, especially if our salaries are not yet competitive. The proposed resolution has the potential of making our teachers' work environment toxic, especially for teachers of color. Many of our teachers are anxious about COVID, and they are having to juggle students in the classroom and students who are quarantined. Now we are adding the stressor of having to monitor what they say in case it is misconstrued as critical race theory. I believe that our 2 boards work best together when we keep our focus on Stafford County's children. I am so proud of our successful collaboration on things like the purchase of the North Star Early Childhood Education Center, the building of the new Moncure Elementary School, the renovation of Ferry Farm Elementary School, the establishment of the Fire and Rescue Program, helping us with the purchase of technology at the start of this pandemic, and most recently in funding more competitive salaries for our bus drivers to help with our transportation issues. So, I respectfully ask the Board of Supervisors to not pass the proposed resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Young, did you want to follow? Dr. Warner was giving that.
Good afternoon. I thank the transportation leaders, staff, and parents that are helping to resolve the transportation issues. I believe I've mentioned this before. I think that by pleasing some of us on the board, by squeezing the time, I mentioned that in May, that we may have created a problem that did not exist. So I think we need to look at that. I still would like to provide some kind of compensation to those parents that are helping drive their kids and other students to school. So I was wondering if we could put that on the FAB as a request from me. On another note, I wanted to say that I do enjoy getting emails, and but some of the emails that I don't appreciate are those emails about race, about attacking my character, those that want me to disappear, or that I'm a horrible person. I even received some emails about watermelon and eating chicken, yes. So when Ms. Healy talked today about the proclamation of Hispanic and Latin Acts, and I know I think I read the one from Black History Month, I believe that if we believe and accept cultural diversity, that we would not need a monthly celebration, right? That we're all one. So when you invite us to a party, just don't invite us to the party, but make sure that we're also having a good time. That's all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Randall?
See my light, okay. One of the things that I set myself up to do when I got on the board was to try to always be a listener and always be a learner. And I find that the best way to do that is in reading your emails and listening to you coming forward, but in also talking with my neighbors and other friends in private conversations. But I've also learned that the best way to divide a community, a room, is to insert fear, insert frustration, and insert anger. And we have seen that every day in so many ways with our leadership, our government, our media, and even in our meetings. Bring up COVID, bring up vaccines, bring up lack of funding, et cetera, and now we have a divided room. I like to remind myself, and maybe it can help someone else, and this is something I have to really work on, is to remember that when those things come in the room, the opposite is usually the solution. Adding kindness, adding love, adding patience, and adding faith. Do we all have the same feelings? No. Do we have to reject conversations and socializations for those with differing views? No. Do we have to pass judgment or classify or name call? No. Are you right because you feel it or you know what you know? Maybe, maybe not. So going forward, I just want to remember and remind others that when you speak, and us too, this is on us too, is to remember to try to keep the room together and not divide. The last meeting, I asked Dr. Hummer and Ms. Okana during their presentations about continuing to follow CDC guidance in such a way that would shorten quarantine, as our level of positivity from quarantine with staff and students has proven low, which again, we have said from last year, and we will say again this year, is students are safer in the schools than they are in the actual community based on the numbers that we see in the community. And also, if you look on our data dashboard, you can see the number of students that we put in quarantine versus the ones that actually become positive is quite low. I know Dr. Jones has continually said in-person instruction is key, and we are definitely in the phase of learning recovery. I have received a letter from a friend of mine in a Southwest school district where they had the quarantine letter that I asked for us to do, where there are dates for a start and a finish with a choice of a 14 or 10-day quarantine and how it is to be done and how virtual learning is to be done for the student while they are quarantined. Spotsy last night, and we all received the presentation, also is changing their guidance, still following CDC, and I would very much like it if we would be in consideration of that. Additionally, over the last few months, various members of the board have asked for vaccine clinics for our students, and before we get into considerations of mandates, I would like for us to keep hands off of that, but I would also very much appreciate having dates and locations in the north, south, east, and west of our county to establish vaccine clinics to help our populations that would like it to have it. And I know, like I said, I think we've been asking since May. I think we offered one over the summer, but I would very much like to, we're a month into school, to have something of a dates, set the date, set the locations, and then we can work from there. Sooner rather than later, please. Teaching and learning offerings are what we're in the business of, but still an agreement with Ms. Healy and the other board members. Of course, we're all in agreement about the transportation challenges, but I'm really growing concerned about the undue stress on students, as students have grades that count in the middle and high school and need information for AP, IB, dual enrollment, SOL, all of those things to be missing consistently. And I really do appreciate that we're standing up and using technology to record these teachers. There's still, like we said, the in-person learning is, they're going to be playing catch up on their own as opposed to being included, especially if they're on a bus. I mean, I just feel like it's just really kind of hurting. It's hurting these kids and it's making it fall apart. And since I've asked a few times, I asked one time and I'm waiting still to find out what percentage of buses are we still arriving at middle schools on time and what percentage of buses are arriving to high schools on time. Additionally, I asked, and I knew it was too early to ask, but now I know it's not too early, I'm understanding now that sports in middle schools have been somewhat put off and that they're using charter buses. So I'm curious if I'm hearing that correctly or not. And I'm also curious about affecting our costs of that and anything that I can learn about the middle school and high school sport and activity transportation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to note that I'm getting far fewer complaints in my email. I appreciate how patient parents have been and how helpful they've been in trying to help us address the transportation problems. And I echo my fellow board members in saying that it's been a very frustrating start to a year that we were all looking forward to. But we are working diligently to solve it. We are doing everything we can. I also want to thank Dr. Jones. I attended the meeting at the Board of Supervisors. I want to assure everyone, we do not teach critical race theory. Critical race theory is a course taught in law schools. It is not something that we teach to our children. Equity is not critical race theory. Equity is about making sure that all students have what they need so that they can reach their full potential. That is what I see our job as. Our job is to make sure that kids have everything that they need so that they can learn. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm concerned when the Board of Supervisors threatens our funding over a ghost, something that we don't teach, that they can't identify, that they don't know how to explain, but they're certain is there. We need to work together as a community, and I think it's important that we need to remember that our constituents are the kids of Stafford County and the families of Stafford County, and that's who I feel that we work for. And I will take full responsibility for the mistakes that we make and for the problems that we've had, and I will assure you that we are trying to solve them. And I will listen to you when you tell me, hey, this isn't working, what are you doing? I will try to fix it. That's what we're here to do. So I just want to say thank you for your patience. We're still working on it. And you know what I've really, really enjoyed? Seeing kids in the classroom. Seeing them work together on projects and laughing together and talking together and having lunch together. It has been such a reaffirming of how important I think education is to see our kids in school. And I'm just really relieved to do it. Thank you.
All right. First, I wanted to thank the board members and the Fairy Godmother Project for giving us our ribbons. It is for childhood cancer. I believe it's month. And I just, for any of you who are not not familiar with that group, they provide and offer services to our staff in our schools for anyone who may have a child in their class that may be suffering through childhood cancer or other things. They come in with a lot of resources. So if you are, and it doesn't just have to be as a teacher, it can be also as a parent. So I don't always give a shout out, but they really do offer some amazing services in support of childhood cancer and other concerns that kids have. So I wanted to make sure we saw that. Partnership. I think that is the word. Tonight we heard our, what I call on the ground people, our administrators. They are talking about the partnerships within the schools to deliver the best services that we can for our students. And those services are multifaceted. Yes, education is a very important part of that, but all of us know when we look back on our school years, I can tell you probably one class that I don't remember very well or tried to forget, which was trigonometry, but I remember that year very well, struggling through it, going to things, being a part of a team, being a part of a drama presentation. I remember those memories. And I want everyone to know that the school division is trying to reestablish that partnership and build on and build a new partnership because we are in a different area. I talk with many parents, and I appreciate those who will take the call back and have an opportunity to listen. I like to listen to you, but I also feel like sometimes you need to listen to some of the things that we have going on and to understand the issues. And what I would just like to say is when I hear the comment, I want my child or my family or my life to be back to pre-COVID. I am looking at you and I am hearing what you're saying, and I'm saying I do too. But I also don't want us to set up an unrealistic expectation that things are different right now. We are trying to do the best that we can, getting counselors, getting other people. Yes, transportation has been frustrating, and we are trying to diligently work on that. For those of you who have come to me with ideas, thank you for the Rocky Run idea. And I thank you for meeting with neighborhoods in the Hartwood district who invited me to come and talk to you about your neighborhood. It helps me understand as well. So that partnership goes a lot of different ways. I see it within the school district, but I also see it throughout our community and especially with our Board of Supervisors. And we all have to be focused on a year that isn't looking like how we maybe wanted it to look. But let's focus on, we are in person, we want to stay in person, we are a growing community, our class sizes are growing, we have trailers at different schools, we have some learning loss we need to take care of. I would love to make sure that when sometimes when bad news comes out on either side or within the community, that the first call that I would get, I would hope from any board members here or even any other elected officials is, wow, how can we help? And I hope that that's how we all react to news that comes out, because the news every day is not always joyful. And there are things that are going on in our community that we would like to fix. But the way we're going to do it is through partnership and by picking up the phone and saying, how can I help? And if tonight you are somebody who wants to be that, we have advisory committees, we have a transportation one, there are opportunities to get involved. But in general, as a community, let's be the pick up the phone and how can I help, because I want to make the situation better. With that, I'll turn to Dr. Jones.
All right, I want to end with some very positive comments, but we do need to have a conversation about transportation. And I've shared with the board that I have some some data to answer your questions about buses that are late, what percentage of buses are late. We've been working on that. Had hoped to have that by Friday, but we just didn't have it available then, so I do intend to share that with you soon. So while I'm mentioning that, I will mention this, and then I'll invite Mr. Fulmer and Mr. Baldwin to speak. But this past Saturday, Mr. Fulmer, Ms. Hazard, as well as myself, all went by the transportation office, and we met some of our transportation staff. They had a training class this past weekend. We have a recruitment day this coming Saturday. So we are onboarding some people. Obviously not fast enough, but we are making every effort to do that. And I will just mention this, I've observed this with our staff. I've talked to parents about transportation issues. I know Mr. Fulmer spent probably a couple days over at the transportation office. Actually had a parent who drove in with his concerns, and they met with them. And Mr. Baldwin's probably being exhausted with us asking them to call parents back. But we are communicating directly with those parents, sometimes not as often as quickly as we'd like to. But what we find is generally we can address the concerns when we have those conversations with parents. So we don't want to discourage you if you have a concern. But I do want to invite Mr. Baldwin and Mr. Fulmer to talk a little bit about the adjustments we've made since the beginning of the year to address communication. Not to say that we're there yet. We still have work to do.
All right, good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Jones. Just to talk about communication and what we've done. We've tried to create some live documents that we share between our dispatch office and our schools for daily updates. So if a bus or we do not have a driver for that day, we are able to put in this document in which the schools can see. From that is how we send our messages. So we send a phone communication and a text communication and an email about the status of the bus. Primarily, if there's no driver for that particular time, we share that. But the goal is to send a bus back around. Chances are that bus will be late. But we are telling folks at that point in time if there is a bus or no bus for that time period. And so we do that in the morning. We try to set a set time that we are able to send it out at least 45 minutes to an hour before each tier. So before the elementary, before the middle schools, before the high schools. We've met that time period at times, and sometimes we have not. It's really based on in the morning at how many drivers are calling in and maybe what time. It could be some mechanical errors. It could be anything. And we try to keep that message going out in the morning as well in the afternoon. And it goes for accidents that are occurring if the bus breaks down. So we are using the resources that we have. Now, in terms of personnel resources, at any point in time during the day, I have anywhere from 2 to 3 people on the phone lines. Our dispatch office kind of stays online with our schools. They have some of the direct lines. We are using email. It's actually a Google Hangout that each school has, and that our dispatch team, if they're on the radio with the bus, the phone may be ringing, and they may be chatting a school up to determine, hey, we are sending some run sheets to you, or the school may chat to them to say, we're looking for a child, do you have this, what time a bus will come? So we do have active modes of communication. Would we like to have more resources in terms of personnel to help do that? Yes, we would. That's always a push. We are interviewing, we started today for some extra admin help, but we've tried to put something in place because the folks that are usually answering these phone calls are, again, on the bus. And so the parents that call in that want to know what's going on, if it's a special case, a safety issue about a bus stop, or want to know why the bus has been late, these are the folks that can research it and get back to our folks. My lead drivers, those are the primary ones that are doing it. They may be on the bus in the morning, they come back, they get information from our communication system of any notes, of any issues. They try to research it and get back to the parents before they leave and get on the afternoon ones. And once they're done, they come back and they try to follow with some phone calls. And so we have our folks doing the same thing. I'm on the phone, I'm moving around, and so in the evenings, I'm able to make phone calls to parents about any particular issues. And like you said, parents are upset. I get it. They want the kids in school on time. I want to get them there on time. But to be able to listen to them and then be able to offer some assistance and the mode of what we're trying to do, it has been some pleasant conversations. I'm not solving their problems because I can't tell them what time and when I'm going to be able to get their child to school on time, but they're better to understand our situation. And so, and I also invite them to call me back. If there's something that we can solve, and if it continues, I tell them, please call me back so we can address it, because a lot of the things we can fix. I can't necessarily fix all the late arrivals, but in terms of the communication, of understanding, I try to lay that groundwork so that they understand that we're working. It's not something that we are just pushing to the side, that we are ignoring them. It's that the volume sometimes overruns what we can give back to you. You're welcome to leave a message or send an email. We will return your calls and get back to you.
Madam Chair, can I follow up with a question? What is the remedy during your explanation of this? You had said the communication gets sent out if there's no bus or if the bus is going to be late. I guess my question is, what is the remedy for when you have to communicate to parents that there is no bus? How are we getting these kids to school?
Well, if there's no bus at that time, we are telling them. But we also are telling them that we will send a bus back after the school day starts for them. So basically what happens is any bus that finishes during school, dispatch will call out and ask, can you go back and rerun a route? And what we will do is go back around. So, and that's what we're telling families, because we do not have a bus at that particular time, but we will send a bus back around, and it's usually after the time school starts.
Okay, so getting back to what I asked Dr. Jones during the member comment, can you use an extra set of hands for temporary administrative help to help you answer phones so that the people in central or in your office can be doing other things, whether it's driving or getting
Yes, and we have
coordination?
provided that. We do have a retiree administrator that's been able to come in and help respond to parent phone calls. We have actually started interviewing for more administrative assistance help to be able to have more folks respond to the phone calls when the parents are actually calling in.
So these are permanent positions that you're creating? for-
Right now,
for admin?
temporary positions, hoping that we can fall into a permanent position.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay, all right. Well, if you need anything more from us, please ask for it.
Trust me, I
Thank you.
am, and will be.
You may not have an answer to this tonight, but, and I talked some with Dr. Jones about this, the students that have been late every day for the past 5-6 weeks, why are they continually being late? And this may be a rhetorical question, but I don't understand. If we know these students are being left, they're late every day, why we are not able to do something about it. So this is my frustration. I don't get it. And these students, and we had a speaker tonight who I assume you're going to get in touch with tomorrow morning to discuss, her particular situation and that bus. But I don't get it, how we can allow students to be late every single day with maybe some help on the horizon, but it's not going to be tomorrow and probably not the next day. So that's what I'm looking for when Dr. Jones gets us that data on the buses that are late, which buses, or is it random buses? Because what I'm hearing from, and I'm sure the only people that are going to contact the school board are the ones that don't have any relief. The people that have been late, their kids have been late every day, except I did see one that was on time yesterday, so yay. Maybe that's going to be a new track we're going to be on. So, I know if you could wave a wand, you'd have everybody in school early. But there's got to be something, as Ms. Hollerback asked, resources. That's actually what I asked Dr. Jones as well when I sent him an email. What can the school board do? And that's what I'm going to hear. What can we do to make sure that you're able to get our kids to school? And I'm going to say, optimistically, early, so they can get that breakfast, they can get settled in before the day starts. So that's, you don't have to try to answer that now, but I do want to know that, and I'm going to be looking for an answer at some point. You know, why we haven't done anything for the kids that are late every day. I mean, as a parent, I wouldn't want my child late any days, but if they were late every day, I don't know, I'd be up here ranting. And God bless our parents, because they're trying to be supportive. You know, they're not, you know, they're not reacting the way I feel I would be reacting, you know, under the circumstances. They're grateful, we're all grateful we're in school, but this is an area we owe these kids. We do.
Well, one of the things we're going to have to strongly consider is time, the time between levels. I mean, it's something that we're going to have to consider doing, but I don't want to do that without looking at the data that I'm going to share with you. So, but that is a factor.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Baldwin, for coming, and it was fun chatting with you on Saturday.
I do have a couple other comments.
Yes.
So today, I had an impromptu meeting with Mr. Lawson. You may remember, he's the North Stafford teacher that came and spoke to us with a couple students about bike paths. So I went over and met with him today, and I have to say, one of the things I really appreciate about him is just his humility, because what he said was, this wasn't my idea. This is a result of conversations I've had with students. So I'm going to go visit his class next Friday. I wanted to do it this Friday, but he asked me to wait till next Friday. So I do want to have a conversation with him and his students next Friday, and I want Greg Martin, our safety person, to join me when we have that conversation, as well as Dr. Nichols. Because we think in the short term, we can really look at those bike pathways. We want to make sure that they're safe before we encourage kids to use them. Dr. Hornick did tell me that there are more students using bike paths now, but Mr. Lawson did share that he hasn't seen the entire pathway. And so we want to go out and be deliberate in taking a look at that and ensure that it's safe. So I want to share that with you. Also, I just want to tell you a quick story. Last Thursday, I went to Moncure Elementary School. I visited a 5th grade class, and they were reading a story about this unusual panther bird. And the students showed me pictures of what they were reading about, but they were having this very rich discussion about figurative language. And I was there with Mr. Said Botham, and I couldn't help but pause and just bask in the moment of seeing 5th graders who were excited about what they were reading and having a very vivacious discussion about what they were reading. So part of what we wanted to do tonight is remind folks that our core mission is teaching and learning. And so our students, despite all of our challenges, are having some very good experiences. And then lastly, I just want to make this comment for all of our staff. You're feeling the stress of all the challenges we face as a board. We are all feeling the stress as staff. I took a moment today. I felt overwhelmed by email and phone calls, so I just walked away from my desk for a few minutes, and I walked through the building, and I just checked in with people. And what I found was our staff are extremely dedicated to what they do, despite the challenges. They still enjoy coming to work every single day. So we're fortunate in Stafford to have people that really believe in the work despite the challenges. So I just want to thank our staff for being so committed to this. We're not necessarily having fun right now, but we're staying at it, and we continue to go at it. So I think we ought to be very proud of our community and their dedication, even in the midst of adversity. So thank you.
All right. Ms. Hall, do we need to?
I don't think that she's connected yet, I'm sorry.
I'll monitor the situation with Mr. Cipher in the back, and if she joins, I'll let you know.
Actually, because of the timing, I know that Ms. Young would like to call in. I don't want to stop us sort of midstream. Is there a way that we can go ahead and make a motion that she can join us virtually at this point?
I'll move it.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded of Ms. Young, if she is able to join in at the appropriate time, that she can join us virtually. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. I just think this was a better point in the meeting to make the motion. All right.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All right, motion to approve 8 items on consent. Any discussion or removals? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our action items.
Madam Chairman, this may seem a little out of order, but we have one of our very hardworking elementary school principals who, remember, they start
early.
Yeah, before the crack of dawn, who is here for agenda item 12.03, an information on a dedication of a portion of the school. And I do not recall any time ever that we have not approved one of these. But I would like to move that to 11.01 action so our poor principal can go home. I'm afraid we're going to have
Second.
extended discussion on some of these action items, and I hate for her to have to wait. Her husband got to go home hours ago.
That's right.
Because he was early on the agenda. But if the board would consider that, I'd like to
Yeah.
move 12.03 to 11.01.
It's done.
Second?
Seconded, yeah.
All right. All right, all those in favor of moving 12.03 to the new 11.01? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So,
And I'd
let's,
like to let Dr. Warner make this next motion.
yes.
Motion to approve item 11.0, what is it?
01.
01, for the approval of the name and dedication of the outdoor classrooms at Widewater Elementary School for Dr. Scott Kisner.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any information that anybody would like to hear about? Are we good? All right.
Very-
I think it reads well. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for staying, Mrs. Bingham.
Thank you, Ms. Healy. I was just going to move her up on the agenda because I was just thinking, there's no reason for her to be still here.
Yes,
this
and I'm
late
sorry,
hour.
I was looking
Thank you.
straight at Ms. Bingham, and anyway. All right, let's move on.
Of course, you're welcome to stay.
Can we, Dr. Jones has a
and
new
out.
staff member here to be recognized.
yes.
So what
I'm going to let
motion-
Dr. Jones do also an introduction.
So I'm going to, thank you very much. I want to invite Jay Cook forward to introduce one of our new staff members.
I forgot.
And let me apologize to him because I forgot to mention this to you at the beginning of the meeting, so thank you.
Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Jones. Please allow me to introduce to you Stephen Rayford, our new Assistant Director of Technology. Stephen has many years of experience in project management and process improvement, formerly in DC Public Schools. So he's been managing the implementation of several information systems and the integration of data and stuff like that. Stephen holds a master's in information technology from the University of Maryland University College and a bachelor's from Winthrop University in South Carolina, I think, yeah. He resides in Spotsylvania with his wife Margaret and their 3 dogs, and we are very happy that he is joining us. So please welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, and it's been my pleasure to work for the school board. Same time I worked at DCBS, I hope to enjoy and retire here too. I know you'll have a high rate here.
Wonderful. Well, welcome aboard, and thanks for staying this evening. We will look forward to seeing you in the halls. Thank you. All right. Anybody ready for 11.0, the new 11.0?
I will make a motion that we approve 11.02, the approval of the proposed F23 to FY32 Stafford County Schools Capital Improvement Projects and 3R Infrastructure.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to make one comment. I agree with where we're going. I think growth is a main driver here. However, based on my discussions this weekend and going over to Fleet Services, and one of, I forget which page it is, I think it says 29, but it talks about the aging, our year of construction for many of our buildings. And I just want to draw everybody's attention to our Fleet Services date. It's 1980. Pupil transportation, 2009. Believe me, that's more modern than our most recent elementary school, which was 2005. But we also have our support services of 1998. And as I was talking to Mr. Baldwin, and as we look into, hopefully, and approving a later agenda item about a larger deep dive into transportation, hopefully over the next few years, we need more buses. I've talked about this before, but we also need to be able to maintain them. And I really feel that we need to put in this CIP, or I have an alternative if we can't, that infrastructure needs to be looked at. I talked with Mr. Baldwin, and I've talked even with Mr. Fulmer over the years, and even Dr. Jones and I talk, so he's not in the dark that this is coming. But talking about, we're a big county, having fueling stations in multiple parts of the county, so we are not all coming to one or two places. Being able to perform maintenance, well, I guess there's never minor maintenance, well, on my car, it's major maintenance, but some of those maintenance things that we don't all have to come to the same place, because buses are all over the county. I really hope as we go forward and study this, that those kinds of, they can be other parts of making transportation easier. I understand this is sort of last minute, so I am supportive, but I really would like the board to consider in the cover letter that is accompanying this capital improvement program over, I believe signed by Dr. Jones, sent over to Mr. Presley. I was wondering if the board would consider a sentence or two highlighting that maybe as of today, we do not have the projects identified to be putting on the county's radar, because Fleet Services is a partnership that we may be exploring those projects as well as part of our transportation structure. The only reason I'm saying, for me, before we're going to need a high school 7, we're going to need some transportation support. So for me, but I am not going to vote against it for that, but I really feel I don't want to miss an opportunity, because what are we always told? We didn't know about that, or that's a surprise. I don't think it's going to be a surprise in the coming years that we need some support in Fleet Services as we begin to study transportation. So I just would ask if the board would consider at least a sentence along that lines of identifying, we're looking at transportation, but it may have building or CIP type needs. Just something for the board to consider.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate your comments, because I can't tell you how many times over the years that building has been on the list and has gotten taken off. However, rather than add a sentence here, which I think would just be superfluous, I'd suggest we consider adding that to the mandate for the Ad Hoc Transportation Committee, as we've already got 4 items for them to look into. Let's have them look into a 5th, and then get a recommendation from them. We're going to get the recommendations before the spring, and that would be a good time as we're relooking at updating. We all know this is a, quote, living document. We could, put that in, on the next round here, because, I mean, we're so far out on these projects, saying that we're looking at something, I don't think it really, gives it much weight. And there's probably a lot of other things that we should be looking at, as well, that are not on here. So I would suggest we add that to the mission statement for the ad hoc transportation, and then see what comes out of that. And this very well could end up being on the CIP list, in the next round.
I second that idea, yeah.
I agree. I was going to suggest the same thing, that it made more sense to have Transportation Ad Hoc Committee come to us with a recommendation, that it makes sense that if we have more than one fleet services facility, especially given the size of the county, one in the north, one in the south, it may be very beneficial, but I think that would be something the Ad Hoc Committee should maybe delve into. I agree. Thank you, Ms. Healy.
Because Ms. Healy and myself and Ms. Hollerback, we've had fleet services 9 years. It's gone in and it comes out because it's always like, well, we need something else. Perhaps the events of the last several weeks may dictate a new look and at the real reasons why we need those. All right, well, I will withdraw that, but I really feel like we should be talking to our counterparts because this is something that I believe will be needed sooner rather than later.
Madam Chairman, if we could, if we have a joint schools working committee meeting, that would be a good topic to put on there, since the county also has a vested interest in that, in this facility and the services that are actually provided from that.
Sure. All right.
Could I just ask maybe our clerk to make a note of that for, yep, thank you.
And I think our resolution somewhat hints at that as well. So, all right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, our next item, 11.03.
Motion to approve the adoption of the school board's FY23 budget priorities.
Second.
All right, any discussion or comment? All right, I'm going to make one other comment, and this again will probably not. One of the things that we keep talking about, and I did talk with Dr. Warner a little bit about this earlier, is when for our part one about our multi-year strategies to raise salaries. I'd really love to see if the board take a stand on either. And I know we can do it through the per pupil expenditure, but I'd really love to see a consideration of a percentage over what the state offers. If the state offers a 3%, I would love for Stafford County to say, we want to be 2%. We would like to provide 2% more than that, because we don't stay competitive when we give what the state gives. That's what everybody's getting. How Prince William gets ahead is they say, thanks so much for the 3% or the 5%, but we're going to offer 7% to bring in, we want our local effort to be a certain percentage over what the state is, because right now the state gives us most of our money. That there's a majority of it that comes from the state. The way that a community supports its education is if the local dollars go there. So I would just say to the board, I hope that we consider that, or it's considered as part of the budget making, because having sat here for a while, doing what the Joneses are doing is not getting us any further. And I don't know, is there a thought, or is it may be best to leave it this way, but I just feel the need to say it.
Yeah, and I would just like to point out that we did give, many of our teachers last year did get more than the 5%, and that we have discussed with the Board of Supervisors this plan to bring the top of the salary scale down. But yeah, we are hoping that they will commit to that, and this was not just a one-time thing, so.
I appreciate your thoughts, Madam Chair. I think one thing that this last year has taught us, though, is we need to be very flexible. So I don't want to commit to a specific percentage, but I also think that it would be nice if we can offer the Board of Supervisors a better long-term strategy for how we're doing this, and that we're cognizant of what what the competition is, because we are losing good teachers to Prince William, because that's where they're going. And so we need to be, but there's more to working in Stafford than just salary. And I think that I'm more comfortable keeping it more open-ended, just because I think that we need that flexibility.
Understood. I'm a goal person, like I like something that we can be working towards. So I think the more distinctive goals that we have, but I do think at some point this community has to decide whether it wants to just do what the state gives everybody or whether we want to carve out our own niche. But that comes from also our public, so. All right. All those in favor of the FY23 budget priorities, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, 11.04, the adoption of a proposed amendment to policy 1403 regarding school attendance zones.
Motion to approve the amended policy 1403. 1403.
Madam Chairman, before you go on, I'd like to second that, so then we can have the discussion.
Okay. 1403, one of the problems I had with it was something that Ms. Randall brought up initially, is we talk about the why we do it, but there was never the how and the when. And this clause, I think, kind of gives us a little bit of guidance as far as that goes, but it also it retains the school board's role in what and how we do this. And whether we do limited redistricting and to alleviate overcrowding in certain schools, or we have to go to a whole, and under the guidance of, we have great staff. We have Lionel, who is a genius at figuring out where our population is. Dr. Jones has been very helpful in giving us guidance in that venue, and I think this clause kind of cleans up one of the questions that we had with this policy.
All right, Ms. Healy, were you the second?
I want to say thank you to whoever came up with this proposal. I think this certainly addresses the concern that was at issue, that there be a opportunity to address issues or take action, but it does not unilaterally open up to the superintendent the authority to just make what I consider significant changes in the school's population. So I was the one that had the initial problem with the higher percentage. This may, could end up in a higher percentage, but it's in the board's court. So thank you to whoever drafted this.
You can thank Ms. Boatwright. She and I discussed it a couple weeks ago, and she was extremely helpful.
Any other discussion, comment? None? All right. All those in favor of the proposed amendment to policy 1403, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to our information items. I believe it is still 12.01. Sorry, let me get my.
It is.
It is. This is about the formation of a one-year ad hoc transportation advisory committee. I'm going to try and have it in front of me because I know we were going to add. Come on, it fit on one page right now, so let's see. Well, one double side, true.
I think we can still do it. There's still room.
I do too. You picked the right paragraph to add. It would be the whereas where we have the 4 areas listed, it would be to add an area 5. Is that correct? All right. Let me see. And review. So, Ms. Hall, we would take out the and put in the 4, and then after the, and then we would add a 5 of, Ms. Healy, are you?
Perhaps we could say, review the transportation support facilities and make any recommendations for enhancements or
Facilities.
School board. Yeah. Because it is the facilities in the broad term.
Right. Is everyone, I mean, I think we covered it. I think that's a great one to end.
Yes, ma'am. That was review the transportation.
And off on the line.
Right.
Right. And it was review the transportation support facilities, period, or and make recommendations.
Recommendations.
Well, all of these are all to make recommendations to the school board. Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion to move this to action, so it would be 11.05.
Second.
All right, this is to move this item to action. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously to move it to action. Is there-
Motion to approve action item 11.05.
Oh,
oops.
You go ahead.
To establish the ad hoc transportation committee.
Second.
Let us get that far.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I just noticed, and I should have noticed this before, but it references a bus monitor, and we would prefer it to be bus attendant in the resolution.
Is that the correct?
Yes.
And I'm glad that in the discussion at our governance committee, that we added a fleet services person and you said bus attendant. Is that
Yes.
correct
Yep.
wording? Ms. Hall, have you noted that for our,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you.
And
very
I
much.
would, if he's willing to, I would like to recommend Christopher Lawson, the teacher who came up with, brought the bicycle idea to us, as maybe one of the teachers to be on the committee.
That'd be great.
I'm sure he'll welcome that addition to his long list of duties.
Other duties as assigned.
Right.
Other
But I
duties
think
as assigned.
I think we should offer it to him.
And also, I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, I know everybody has read this, but to look that perhaps there will be a broader and more in-depth to talk about roads, traffic patterns. We will be bringing that up at the Joint Schools Working Committee, and we can also loop in the information about the fleet services and facilities. So I just wanted to make sure that that was already started. All right.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Section 6 says the superintendent or designee may serve as a committee member and be entitled to propose and recommend items for consideration to the committee. I would suggest that rather than we say may serve as a committee member, that we consider saying will serve as a resource to the committee. I don't want the committee to feel any undue influence, and this is no reflection on you, Dr. Jones, but sometimes when you have someone in a position of authority, particularly when they're your boss's boss, you may tend to want to do what they are recommending. Yes. So I think it's important that the superintendent or, a designee be available as a resource, because somebody's going to have to provide the administrative services and get all this information together. But I'd rather have them be a resource to the committee, and even though I always tell everybody will means may, I would put will in there, rather than, may sounds so, maybe. This way, the committee knows it's going to have that resource available. And certainly, I don't like the be entitled, I just don't particularly like that language, and just say, and may propose and recommend, rather than be entitled, because we don't want to entitle, one member of a 19-member committee.
So we would say the superintendent or designee will serve as a committee resource.
Yeah.
And may propose and recommend items for consideration to the committee. Is that? All right. So to those who move the motion with the requested edits, I assume.
That's fine with me.
Yes.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I know this was not as part of it. I would ask each of the board members, as you note, there is a recommendation that you will appoint one primary member and an alternate. I've when thinking about this and in the particular time that we are in, we want to make sure that there is an alternate. So I would ask, Dr. Jones, would you say by next Wednesday, like a week or so? Because
Yeah.
or actually, whoever you would like me to look towards, would you say a week? Okay. So by next Wednesday, let's say Wednesday as opposed to, that gives us a day
Oh,
off on Monday.
So a week to get our 2 names in.
Yes.
Okay.
All
And
right.
also, just in consideration, as you talk to parents, trying to make sure that we've got elementary, middle, and high represented as parents for the different runs.
That's probably good. All right, well, thank you, board members. I think this is going to be an important committee for, yes.
Can we make sure that they get, and I'm sure they will get the transportation study, but we also, the board received a decision briefing. Can we make sure that they get that too? It was just like a shorter page document. I just want to make sure that they get that as well.
I'm sure Mr. Fulmer and Mr. Baldwin will have a whole working group notebook for, or some kind of documents for them to be familiar with. So, all right. Next would be 12.02. 01, that's right. We have moved. we keep filling that spot. This is a discussion regarding the Stafford County Planning Commission's possible recommendation to modify the urban services area. I may have, I know I'm on here as the preparer. It's partly because a commission member approached me in that regard. I don't know if Mr. Anderson, you want to come down and provide any comment?
Yes, good evening, and thanks, Ms. Hazard, for bringing this to our attention, to my attention. Lionel and I have been in communication with the county, and I'm sorry, Mr. White, Mr. Fulmer's been helping with this as well. And the urban services area is basically the extent of where the utilities reach, the areas where you can do bigger development. So they're not talking about moving the utilities or, making it farther. It's already at the edge of the urban services area. There's apparently been a request that an area be removed from the urban services area. That includes our land. And there's really not an advantage for the schools to remove any land that we own from the urban services area. So our recommendation is that it not be removed. We're communicating with the county, and if they did remove it, it could easily be put back in. Easily, it could be put back in when and if we're ready to build on that site. The Cliff Farm property is not the preferred site for any of the projects that are within our 10-year plan right now, but it doesn't mean we would never build there. So this is something that we think should stay in the urban services area because it's right in the edge right now. It was determined and is currently in the urban service area, so perhaps should not be removed.
Can I? Yeah, so this is in my district, and I have been in contact with a couple of the homeowners who live in that area. And so I want to say that the concern for them is there is, in the other area that's being proposed to remove from the urban services area, is what's known as the Filippo Farm. And there was talk of that piece of property being rezoned to be turned into a 55-plus community. And the homeowners were rather surprised. There's concern about the roads and how much traffic will be yielded. There's concern about will it really not impact the schools because it's only one member of the household has to be over 55 for it to be an over 55 community. So there was concern about that. And so in their discussions was the thought that if it was removed from the urban services area, then the family at least could sell the property, subdivide it based on by right, which they can't do if it's in the urban services area. And so I think that is why there was the discussion of that property. Now, it's my understanding that about, let's say, 12, 15 years ago, the Filippo Farm was not in the urban services area, just the Cliff Farm property was in the urban services area. And then the Cliff Farm property got moved into the urban services area. So it seems like it could certainly, just that portion be moved out, and Cliff Farm could be left in the urban services area. So from my perspective, I don't think it's the school division's decision about the Filippo Farm and what the recommendation for that should be. But I do understand that we might have some concern about removing the Cliff Farm site from the urban services area.
Madam Chair?
Sure.
In all the time that we've been on this board and involved in Stafford County discussions, whether it was Planning Commission or Board of Supervisors, with regard to the urban services area and the attempt to stop sprawl. There was a large exercise about the different urban services areas and wanting to keep all the development inside the district for the water, where the water lines are.
Right.
So I guess my question is what is the intent on taking that out? Because you take that whole parcel of land out of the urban services area, you are now welcoming more sprawl. So how does that coincide with what they've been preaching for the last 15 years?
Right. I'm not sure. I don't think I have a good answer for that. I know there's a meeting tomorrow, and Mr. White was planning to attend that. He's been in communication with the Planning Commission, and so the decision that they make on the other properties is not really what our concern is. We're just focused on the school property. And it's not a huge issue for us, but, obviously it would affect us to take that out of the urban services area. Again, we're not planning to build on that land anytime soon, but it would need to be in the urban services area to be developed. So I'm not sure what the advantage is for that other parcel that's off of our property. And I'm not really sure why they're doing this or why they're considering it all. I do know it was in a subcommittee discussion, and so it was moved forward to the Planning Commission, and they're going to address this issue tomorrow night.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit confused too, because they went for many years, the Board of Supervisors, trying to encourage us to sell the land if we're not going to use it. Don't keep it in your inventory if you're never going to be able to build there.
Right.
We're never going to be able to afford to build there because nobody's ever going to, the BOS is never going to give us money to do the land development there. It was too expensive. That's why we haven't built on it yet. So them taking it out of the urban services area makes it even more difficult for us to sell it if we want to.
That's true.
So anyway,
I think
know
there's
it's
a
not your
lot
issue.
of,
I'll be curious to
We
hear
wouldn't
what they
be-
say.
We
Yes.
wouldn't be selling it, though. Any land that we don't use, we have to surplus to the county. And the county would be selling it. So hypothetically, we would not have any advantage to,
we're going to continue
not
to look at
keeping this
that
in the land
property. We'll continue to look at that property, and the way I see the growth in this county, it may be very well a site for some school that we need to build in the future. It's just not within our 10-year plan right now. Great.
Because
Yeah.
my only comment was, in bringing it forward, is because this is land that is in our inventory, that I felt that the board needed to take a look at it to make sure that we did not support any decision that could make it less desirable or less marketable, or tie our hands in any way of either keeping it or not keeping it. Being the board member that represents the only school that is on public water, I would encourage that we always be putting our schools on, in the urban services area. And so I just feel like at this time, it would be to our advantage without tying our hands in the future with regard to marketability or use as a school. We're going to want it to be in the urban services area to get the maximum possible use.
Yeah, definitely. And I appreciate you bringing it up so that we're not doing something that y'all would not support. So this just helps us strengthen our resolve to keep it in the urban service area, recommend that the county keep it in the urban services area.
The school portion. The school, and I would just say to make sure there's an understanding that we do not have an opinion about the other portion of land that
Exactly,
does
yeah,
not
our
belong
focus
to the
is
school
only on the
system.
school property. We appreciate the county taking care of everything else.
Exactly.
We're staying in our lane.
That's right, exactly. All right, thank you all, and thank you, Mr. White. I think are you going tomorrow to the meeting? We appreciate you doing that. All right, well, we move from land to buses, I believe. The next two agenda items relate to the purchase of buses. Dr. Jones, is there any urgency to these matters? I mean, to these items?
Yes, but I'll let Mr. Fulmer speak to it.
I can see Mr. Baldwin back there.
If you have specific questions, Mr. Baldwin will come up, but the sooner we can place the orders at this point, the sooner we can get on the list with the bus manufacturers, the better. They have delays just like everybody else, and
Yes.
chip shortages, and we keep getting pushed back on our prior orders, so the sooner we can get on this one, the earlier we get on their list.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we move items, I don't know what these are now. Are they
2 and 3?
1202 and 1203 to action?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor of moving these two agenda items to action, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Oh, thank you. All right, is there a follow-on motion?
I think it's 11:05 and 6.
Yeah, move to approve 1105 and 6.
Second.
We probably ought to
Do each
do
one?
them, we can do them quickly, but I do them separately.
So move to approve 1105?
Second.
Right?
It's
moved and
actually 11:06 and 7 now.
Okay,
Okay.
1106.
Do I have 11?
All right. Any questions on that one?
I had one.
Yes.
So when I was looking at the, and I mentioned this in the FAB, and I just wasn't sure, there was a little bit of a discrepancy in the cost of the 77 passenger in one and the 77 in the other contract. And I was wondering if we were able to get, it's so small, I know, but I was just curious if we were able to say anything about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's two different manufacturers that we're using this time, and that's intentional. It's also some diesel buses and some gasoline buses. So they're not identical buses, and so we're trying to diversify the fleet a little bit there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, was there a second for that?
Yes.
Was it? Okay, I apologize.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion any nays? All right. Motion carries unanimously.
Motion to approve 1107 additional buses.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion about or questions about the Sunny Merriman purchase? All right. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, thank you. All right, motion carries unanimously. Go and get those buses. Upcoming meetings, we will be here next week, board members, at 6 o'clock. We will have the meeting with the PTO, PTA representatives on Thursday, I believe, the 23rd, and then our next meeting will be September 28th. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Madam Chair, is Tuesday going to be soon enough for me to get this revised resolution signed?
Oh, yes.
Will that be okay?
Anybody who is here, you have to redo it. Okay.